So, investment research. It's incredibly complex, right?
It really is.
You've got macroeconomics, company financials, quantitative data. I mean, just breaking it down is a huge task.
Monumental, yeah. Even for a whole team of people, let alone trying to get one single AI to handle it all.
Right, and tackling that kind of, inherent complexity, that's precisely what the source material we're digging into today is all about.
Exactly. We're looking at this technical guide, this documentation.
Yeah, on building a multi-agent system with the OpenAI Agents SDK, specifically for investment research.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission for this deep dive really is to get under the hood, understand how these AI agents actually work together.
They collaborate.
Yeah, and what that means for tackling these big, messy problems and getting, genuinely useful insights.
It's less like asking one chatbot a question, and maybe more like assembling a team, a digital team.
A team of specialists.
Exactly. Each with its own skills, its own tools, working under a kind of manager agent to figure out a tough question. It's a pretty neat concept.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning then. Multi-agent collaboration. What does that actually mean in a system like this?
Well, at its core, it's about moving past the idea of one giant AI, one large language model, trying to do everything.
The jack-of-all-trades model.
Right. Instead, you design multiple separate, more focused AI agents, and then you figure out how to get them to coordinate, to work towards a common goal.
So not one big brain, but several smaller specialized ones.
This is a good way to think about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Each agent can be, fine-tuned, given specific instructions, specific tools for its particular task or knowledge area.
And for something like finance, that seems to map quite well.
Oh, definitely. It maps really naturally to how analysis is often divided anyway. You can have one agent that's the macro expert.
Looking at the big picture.
Yeah, interest rates, economic growth, that sort of thing. Then another agent purely focused on company fundamentals.
Balance sheets, income statements.
Exactly. Digging into the company's health.
Yeah.
And maybe a third agent dedicated to the quant side.
Crunching numbers, looking for signals, correlations.
Precisely, data analysis.
And the system itself makes sure they, talk to each other, work together somehow.
Yeah, there's an orchestration layer. It manages how they interact, lets them share information, combine what they find.
To get that final unified answer.
That's the idea.
Okay, now the source mentions different ways they can collaborate. Two main patterns, handoff and agent as a tool.
Right. The SDK supports different patterns. Handoff is one where control can sort of pass between agents dynamically.
Like one expert saying, okay, now you take over.
Sort of, yeah. It's good for more flexible flows, maybe more conversational things where the path isn't totally fixed.
But that's not what they used here for the investment system.
No. For this specific project, the guide emphasizes the agent as a tool pattern.
Agent as a tool. Okay, that sounds different. What does that actually mean for the structure?
It means you have a central agent, a kind of controller. In this case, it's the head portfolio manager agent.
The head PM.
Right. And this PM agent doesn't just hand off the whole task. Instead, it treats the other agents, the specialists.
The macro fundamental quant guys.
Exactly. It treats them like tools. Just like it might call a tool to search the web or, run some code.
Ah, okay. So the head PM is like the conductor.
Yeah.
And the specialists are the orchestra sections it directs.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
And the big advantage the source points out for using this pattern, especially for something structured like investment analysis, is that the manager agent stays in control the whole time.
Okay, so it keeps things organized.
Very organized. It makes the workflow and the sort of reasoning process much clearer, more transparent. It also simplifies the orchestration, where control sits.
Right.
And crucially, it lets the manager call multiple specialists at the same time.
Ah, parallel processing.
Exactly. Which can speed up the whole analysis quite a bit.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's map that agent as a tool idea onto this specific investment system. What does the architecture actually look like?
It's set up as a classic hub and spoke system. Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
The head portfolio manager agent, the PM, that's the hub, right in the center.
And the specialists are the spokes radiating out.
Correct. You have those distinct agents, macro analysis, fundamental analysis, and quantitative analysis. Each is a spoke.
Got it. So how does a query flow through this? Like if I ask about, say, Google stock and how sensitive it is to interest rates.
Okay, so your question first hits the head PM agent.
Right, the hub.
And that PM agent has its core instructions, its prompt, which is kind of like its firm philosophy plus the workflow rules. Its main job is to look at your query.
Understand what I'm really asking.
Yeah, break it down into the different analytical pieces needed. Macro view, company view, data view. And then it delegates.
Delegates by calling the specialist agents.
Exactly. It calls them as tools. It'll ping the macro agent for the bigger picture, the fundamental agent for the Google specifics, the quant agent for data and correlations.
Feeding them the relevant bits of my original question.
Precisely. Giving them the context they need. Then those specialists do their focused analysis within their own domain.
And report back to the PM.
Yep, they send their findings back to the manager. And then the head PM agent's job is to take all these different pieces.
The macro, the fundamental, the quant.
And synthesize them. Combine them into one coherent, comprehensive answer, or in this case, a structured report for you, the user.
Now, one thing that really jumped out from the source was the variety of tools these agents can use. It's not just calling other agents, right?
Oh, absolutely not. And that's really key to how deep the system can go.
Yeah.
The Agents SDK lets agents reach outside themselves, interact with the world, run calculations through different kinds of tools. And this project uses a real mix.
Okay, so what are the main types of tools we see in this investment system?
They talk about three main kinds. First, there's an MCP server. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol.
Okay. What's that do?
Think of it like a standardized gateway. It connects the agents to external data or tools. In their setup, they use it to connect to a local server that can grab financial data, maybe from Yahoo Finance, for example.
So that's how an agent gets, like, the latest stock price or the PE ratio?
Exactly. In a structured way the agent can understand. Second, they use OpenAI managed tools.
Okay, managed by OpenAI itself.
Right. These are powerful tools hosted by OpenAI that you can just sort of plug in. They offer capabilities right out of the box.
Like what kind of capabilities?
Well, the source specifically mentions the code interpreter.
For running calculations, analysis?
Yeah, complex math, stats, that kind of thing. And also web search.
To pull in real-time info from the web.
Yep. News, market trends, whatever's relevant that's current online. So these give the agents immediate analytical and research power without you having to build it all yourself.
That's pretty powerful. And the third type?
Custom tools. This is where it gets really flexible. These are basically Python functions that you, the developer, write yourself.
Your own code.
Your own code.
Yeah.
And you register it with the SDK, and boom, it becomes a tool the agent can call just like any other.
And where would that fit in for investment analysis?
Well, this is perfect for domain-specific stuff.
Yeah.
Like the source mentions using custom tools to pull data from specific economic sources, maybe like FRA data.
Okay, specialized data feeds.
Exactly. Or even for basic things like interacting with the local file system, writing the final report file to disk. That's done with a custom tool.
Okay, so you combine these three. The MCP gateway for specific data, the powerful built-in OpenAI tools, and your own custom code for everything else.
Right.
And suddenly your agents can access and process a really wide range of information.
Exactly. It gives them the reach and the capability they need to do that deep dive analysis for complex investment questions.
Let's circle back to the architecture then. This hub-and-spoke design, the head PM using specialists as tools, why is that better? What are the real wins compared to just, trying to make one giant super agent?
Yeah, the source is pretty clear on this. They argue that single monolithic agents just struggle when tasks get this broad and deep.
Too much to handle.
Kind of, yeah. The benefits of this specialized orchestrated approach, they're pretty significant.
I'm guessing deeper research quality is a big one.
Absolutely, number one, probably. Because each specialist agent is laser focused on its domain.
Macro, fundamental, quant.
Right. It can have really specific instructions, its own tailored prompt, and access to the best tools and data just for that job. So you get a much deeper, higher quality analysis within each slice before the PM puts it all together.
More granular insights.
Way more granular, yeah. Insights you might miss otherwise.
And I bet it's easier to manage, too.
Oh, much easier. Modularity is key here. You can tweak the macro agent's logic or update its tools without breaking the fundamental or quant agents.
Makes sense.
So it's easier to maintain, easier to test, easier to debug, and much easier to add new specialists later if you want.
What about speed? Does this help make it faster?
Definitely. We touched on this, but because the head PM can call the specialists in parallel.
Right, they work simultaneously.
Yeah, they can do their analyses at the same time. That concurrent processing cuts down the total time needed for a full multi-part report significantly compared to one agent doing step 1, then step 2, then step 3.
Sequentially, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And for finance, things like consistency, auditability, knowing how it got the answer must be crucial.
Absolutely critical. The structured workflow, dictated by that head PM's prompt we talked about,
Right.
means you get a consistent process every time you run an analysis.
Repeatable.
Exactly. And the system uses tracing. Basically, it logs everything, every step, every tool call, the agent's intermediate thoughts.
So you can see the whole chain of reasoning.
Total visibility.
Yeah.
Which makes the whole thing auditable. You can trust the result more because you can see how it got there.
So it's not just about getting an answer. It's about getting a reliable, transparent, deep answer. Okay, how does the SDK actually make this happen? What are the nuts and bolts?
Well, the core idea in the implementation is wrapping those specialist agents so they look like simple functions or tools to the head PM.
Making them easy to call.
Yeah, the SDK provides ways to do that, using things like function decorators in Python. So the PM literally just calls the macro agent like it might call, I don't know, a simple calculator function.
Okay.
And the system uses specific tools built for this kind of orchestration. There's one mention that specifically helps run those specialist calls in parallel efficiently.
Leveraging the SDK's ability to handle concurrent tasks.
Exactly.
And the head PM's brain, those instructions, that prompt sounds really important.
Fundamentally important, yeah. The source makes a point that the head PM's main prompt is loaded from a configuration file. And it's not just a simple request, it's the whole blueprint.
The strategy.
The whole strategy. It encodes that firm philosophy like, should it challenge consensus, focus on original thinking, be risk aware. All that's in there. Plus the detailed rules for when and how to use all its tools.
Including the specialist agents themselves.
Right. And the entire step-by-step workflow it needs to follow to analyze the request and then synthesize the results from the specialists.
Wow, so you're basically embedding the entire investment process into that manager agent's instructions.
Pretty much, yeah. And they even mention a specific tool just for the final step, a memo editor tool, to make sure the synthesized findings get formatted nicely into that structured report.
Okay. And the overall design emphasizes being able to extend it later, add more agents or tools.
Yeah, extensibility is a goal. And transparency, too, using that tracing we mentioned for debugging and just understanding what's going on inside.
Okay, so we have this pretty sophisticated setup. Head PM, specialist agents as tools, diverse actual tools, a detailed strategy. What does the output actually look like? If I use this system, what do I get back?
Well, the source provides an example output. It's structured like a professional investment memo.
Okay.
The specific example they show is an analysis of GeoGL, Google's parent company Alphabet.
And does the memo structure reflect that team approach we've been talking about?
It absolutely does. It kicks off with an executive summary. Then you get distinct sections presenting the findings from each specialist, fundamentals, macro, quantitative.
So you see their individual contributions.
Right. And then comes the really critical part, the portfolio manager synthesis. That's where the head PM agent integrates those views. And finally, there's the recommendation itself.
What kind of specific insights were in that Google example? Was it just generic stuff?
No, I got pretty specific.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it includes the basics, price, market cap, PE ratio, but the real value is in the analysis. For instance, on the macro side, it looked at interest rate sensitivity.
Right, the question we posed earlier.
Exactly. And the key insight the memo highlighted, apparently generated by the quant agent, was that Google's stock price showed surprisingly modest direct sensitivity to big interest rate benchmarks.
Really? Like the 10-year Treasury yield?
Yeah, or the Fed funds rate.
Mm.
The analysis showed correlation numbers like 0.29 and 0.05 respectively. Pretty low.
Huh. Okay, that's a concrete data-driven point. Maybe not immediately obvious.
Exactly. The kind of thing this system is designed to surface. It also talked about key risks the agents identified.
Yeah, what?
Things like, potential headwinds in keeping up the AI growth momentum, risks from maybe sector rotation at attack, regulatory stuff, the usual suspects, but analyzed.
And the synthesis part, did it just agree with everything?
Apparently, the synthesis section tried to weigh different views, maybe challenge a simple consensus story, reflecting that firm philosophy of originality we talked about.
Okay. Did it get specific enough to give, price targets?
Yeah, the example memo did include potential year-end price targets based on its analysis, but it also outlined downside scenarios and the risks associated with those.
And it backed this up with data.
That's the idea. It referenced supporting data points pulled by the agent's financials for the fundamentals, those correlation numbers for the quant side, even things like counts of analyst buy-sell ratings for sentiment.
Okay, but it's really important to stress here, this is the system's output based on the source material description. This isn't us giving financial advice.
Oh, absolutely. Critical point. The source material itself and the example output they show come with a very clear disclaimer. This is for education, For illustration only,
Not investment advice.
definitely not.
Yeah.
You should always talk to a qualified professional. We're just reporting on the design and the kind of output this specific system, as described in the guide, can produce. We're not endorsing the conclusions.
Right. Impartiality is key. Okay, so wrapping up the technical side, what are the core SDK features that actually make all this complex teamwork possible?
The source points to a few key things in the OpenAI Agents SDK. The agent loop is fundamental. That's the engine that handles the back and forth logic, calling tools, incorporating the language model's reasoning.
Managing the flow.
Yeah. Python-first orchestration is another big one. It means developers can build these complex workflows using standard Python code, which is familiar to many.
Makes it accessible.
Right. Function tools, which we talked about, the ability to wrap code, including other agents so they look like callable tools. That's huge.
And tracing.
And tracing, yeah. For that essential visibility. Seeing the sequence of calls, the inputs, the outputs, the agent's intermediate thoughts, it's invaluable for debugging and just understanding what the heck is going on.
Okay, so looking back at this whole deep dive, the core idea seems to be using this agent as a tool pattern with specialized agents and the right tools, lets you break down really complex problems like investment analysis into parts that can be managed and tackled collaboratively by AI.
Yeah, that's the essence. It's a potential blueprint for getting depth, structure, transparency, and, importantly, speed in analysis that might be really hard for one single AI.
A way to handle information overload.
Exactly, and pull out meaningful insights from complex areas.
So think about the big, messy challenges you might be facing, the ones that feel overwhelming or need expertise from different angles. Could breaking them down like this, orchestrating a team of digital agents, could that offer a new way to get your head around them or even solve them?
It definitely shifts the focus, doesn't it? From just trying to build one giant perfect AI
to designing a really effective team of AIs.
Right.
And here's maybe the really provocative thought to leave you with. If AI teams built with this kind of structure, specialization, tool access, if they can tackle something as complex and data-heavy as financial markets, what other seemingly impossible research questions, what other huge domains of information could we start to crack just by building the right digital team?